This episode of MMPQB is brought to you by Unleashed Music. Artists like Dar Williams, Michelle Malone, even Arctic Monkeys have trusted Unleashed to help get their music heard. When you're ready to take the next step in your creative career, you can find them at unleashedmusic.com. Welcome to More Music Please, a Quarantine Beat. I'm your host, MK. Join me and my guest as we explore how the music industry is staying busy and keeping connected during lockdown, and also just talking about whatever. Let's get started. On the line with me today, my first actual radio guest. This is really funny. So, I've come from this radio background, and I talk about that pretty much every episode, but this is the first time that I've had a guest who is actually a radio professional themselves. It's Brad Savage, who you might know from the Summit FM in Akron and Canton, Ohio, and Youngstown too. You are the program director. And what's your air shift, Brad?
I do the afternoon show.
Nice.
Yeah. But you said professional. That's nice. That's putting it nicely.
Do you not consider yourself one after all these years?
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding, but it's no, it's nice to talk to you. I didn't realize I would be the first radio industry person on the podcast here.
Well, not industry. I mean, I've talked to Jen Daunt and Jack Barton and people who are in the industry, but you are the first radio host, program director or music director that I've had on the show, which is really funny because you would think those would be like half of my Rolodex, but somehow, I mean, artists are really easy because they're always down to do podcasts and they're good at interviews. But I wanted to hear from a radio guy. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, well, happy to be here. That's great. And congrats on this exciting new venture, and kind of leading the way into digital podcast world, because I think there's just more and more of that is taking over some of the attention and audience from more traditional radio stations. So I have real mixed feelings about that.
Well, listen, I could still be in radio, but they don't want me. So
yeah. Well, maybe you can come here. You would relocate to the Rubber City, right? You would love that.
I would think about it.
How about that? Yeah, that's as committal as we can get. That's good.
Tell me about Akron. Are you in Akron proper? Is that where you live with your family?
Well, yeah. So, the radio station is in city of Akron, and we live in just one of the surrounding communities called Wadsworth, which sounds like, I don't know what sounds like something from Harry Potter or something. Yeah, Wadsworth.
Like Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, and I've been here for 5 years in September. I mean, my 5th anniversary of moving to Akron from Virginia. We were in Charlottesville, Virginia for over 9 years before that. But it goes fast. And yeah, 5-year anniversary is coming up here. But yeah, the city is great. Well, a lot of things have changed in 2020, but we were really making a nice impact in terms of like touring and music and cultural community, and really, bubbling up more and more into into the music industry touring stratosphere. We were getting a lot more shows, and Akron is only about 30 miles outside of Cleveland, like outside of downtown Cleveland. Yeah. So in a way, the city is part of the Cleveland Metro, but in many ways it's not, and it's its own city as well. But, it's really great. We have a ton of great music and local and independent artists here, and it's kind of becoming a more and more culturally sophisticated area. I think our trajectory has kind of slowed down as, along with a lot of places, because all of a sudden there's just no arts and music and gatherings happening, and there's no word on when that'll come back. But nonetheless, it's turned out to be a really good place to be. I mean, we've really liked it. And the nice thing comparatively to Charlottesville for us was it's just a lot more affordable here. Some of those really funky, cool college towns are quite costly, cost of living wise and stuff. Um, so that's been, a favorable move for us, and it takes a while to get established and kind of get to know people and everything. But now, almost 5 years in, we're doing pretty well.
Well, good. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I really love a lot of the like I guess you'd call them like secondary market cities in the
Yep.
music
Yep.
world. I think that's where a lot of like the coolest personality it comes out is in these little places. And yeah, it doesn't shock me at all to hear that Akron's a great place. And for anybody who is listening who's not super familiar with the AAA non-commercial radio world, or has not been to that part of the country, the Summit is a great station, very highly regarded. And like you were saying, you do a lot of work bringing music to your community, and you, like myself, are really passionate about supporting local artists within your scene. So I just want to make sure everybody
Yep.
knows that like you guys are doing awesome work over there. And yeah, thanks for being one of the good ones.
Yeah, we try our best. One of the biggest changes that we made once the lockdown happened and all the touring stopped, we were already playing quite a bit of local music and independent artists on the Summit. But we started, our area code is 330, so that comes through a lot on the air. We say like 330 proud and things like that. So we started the 330 at 3:30, which every weekday is a 33-minute local music show at
Oh,
3:30 every afternoon.
that's
So,
genius.
in I mean, beyond, yeah, and I can't take credit for the name. That was one of our volunteers and member donors that came up with the name, and he just
Yeah.
said, "You should do a local show every day at 3:30." And I was like, "Wow, that's brilliant. Let's do it." And especially since all of a sudden all the touring bands weren't happening, we thought it would make a little more sense to just spotlight the locals and make them into the real hometown heroes more than ever. I mean, they already were played, but it was like one every hour, maybe every other hour or something. And now, in addition, we're still doing that, but we're also doing this special show. And what's really taken off quickly for the station is all the bands that are recording new singles will give me an advance track right before it officially gets released or comes on to the online platforms, and we'll do a premiere, and then we don't even ask, but they end up posting about it on their social media, like, "Hey,
Yeah.
listen to the Summit on Thursday. They're going to premiere our brand new song." So it's kind of like this guerrilla marketing thing. So it's been really nice to work with that, and it gives us some interaction with actual musicians, since the national touring artists aren't coming through at this point. And gosh, we sure hope they do again soon, but there's just no word on when that might happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it gives some hope and some kind of like brightness to your local artists who are still like wanting to create music, bursting with all this creativity, and maybe otherwise wouldn't have really had a reason. I mean, beyond just like making
Yeah.
it for the joy of it, but like this gives some kind of like platform, some kind of like goal for it when there can't be shows, there can't be tours, there can't be any of the stuff that usually they would do, to support the release. At least they have this. And, radio in a time like this, like when I was, briefly still on the radio during the pandemic, I found that people were tuning in even more and were like really appreciating the kind of like connected, distant yet connected sense that you get from listening to a radio station and knowing that there's so many other people out there listening. And I would go on like Instagram Live and like talk to people while I was on the air, which I thought was really cool. And people would, drop in and say hi and request songs and ask questions. And, I think radio is more important than ever. And when you, as a radio station, support your local music community, like you said, they support you in return. They share, they tell people to listen, they appreciate you, they hopefully donate if that's ever a thing that can happen again.
Yep.
So are you guys fully
Yeah.
non-commercial?
Yeah, so yeah, we are a public and listener supported. We usually only do 2 on-air campaigns, 2 pledge campaigns per year in spring and fall. Well, our spring campaign was slated for like that third week of March when the stay-at-home orders came down. So we skipped it, and we did we did a really strange campaign at the end of June, but it did great. Those who were able to support the station, I feel like they wanted to more than ever before. They really wanted to share their support. That is one good thing that's coming out of this, is the things that you're passionate about and believe in, the things that match your philosophical beliefs. You want to see them succeed. Same thing with some of the restaurants that, were closed down for weeks and months, and now people are trying to support them, or even if they're just doing takeouts. Here in Ohio, most restaurants have opened, I think, at 50% capacity, but some have chosen to just not open their dining rooms and they're just doing takeout. But some of the neat independent places are getting a heck of a following for takeout, and it's good. Just support what you care about,
Yeah. Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm going to write that down, MK. That's great.
I don't think I made that up. I think I'm pulling that from somewhere, so don't credit me.
Okay.
So what else have you guys been doing at the summit? What other kind of COVID adjustments have you had to make?
One really funny thing is I read one of those radio articles that said, radio was an industry that was kind of dragging its feet on digital adoption. But thanks to COVID, we've all learned very quickly how to step into the virtual world a little more. Mm-hmm. And I think even if, I'm very excited for when our audience sessions and, in studios can come back. But I think we're going to have to keep a digital version of that online in the future, so even when we once again can have crowds we moved to a brand new facility last November.
That's right. I forgot. And we did.
Yeah. And we have this beautiful performance space. And I think we did 4 sessions there. And now it's on hold. It's terrible. But thank goodness we moved, because the new facility has worked out a lot better, just in terms of here's one big difference. We're all using different studios and trying to maintain a good level of social distance, even in the office, our hours for the staff have kind of adjusted, where I start at home and do most of my computer work and phone calls and things like that at home. And I'm not even coming into the station until, say, noon or 1 o'clock each day. And then I go on at 3. And I'm kind of the last one to lock up the place at night now. But, the idea of being physically on site is a little more adjustable now. No complaints, especially being a dad, and having the kiddos at home, although it is harder to focus sometimes. Mm-hmm. But so that's one big change. And we we're all broadcasting from different rooms. So Chad Miller is our midday show, and he's in our Studio B. Our morning show guy, Andrew, is in production room C, and I'm in the main on air Studio A. And, that's, the core group that's on now. We had some other part-time and weekend and volunteer people that would come in, and that's, because of just some of the different stipulations of the Akron school. The station is owned by or operated by Akron Public Schools, and we're actually on one of the high school campuses in Akron. Our new studios are, and it's an interesting arrangement, because they don't we have to financially support ourselves. Mm-hmm. So they don't control the finances or pay our salaries. That's what we have to do our own fundraising for. But the license is held by the Akron schools. There are our ownership board, and they've directed, social distancing, and their school, the schools ended early this year. And now when they go back to school in a couple of weeks here, it's all virtual. And they have, I think it's 26 or 27 schools. And they've said they made the commitment that the first 9 weeks are all virtual learning, distance learning, and they're not coming into the buildings yet. So we've been kind of under their guidance as well about having guests and about having people in the building. So that's been another big adjustment. So we have this beautiful facility, and we can't show it off to anybody. But one day One day we will again.
Absolutely. And it's great that you have the capacity to be, kind of in isolation at the studio
Yeah.
as much as I'm sure it's a bummer, but
As,
it's also like for safety purposes, it's great.
yeah. No, because I just keep feeling so fortunate to be working at a place that takes it seriously and that is allowing and encouraging, social distancing among staff. I think our full-time staff is 7, and even among that, we're kind of rotating day, except for Andrew, Chad, and me, who are here each day and on air each day. We're kind of rotating through. We're doing virtual staff meetings every Tuesday now using Zoom, and I'm ready to not ever use Zoom again because it's just kind of exhausting.
Oh, it's
like, because you're on camera all the time, I don't know. Maybe I'm too old.
We want to be on camera. I know.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Like there's a little bit of that, like, what do you call that? That introvert extrovert type thing going on,
Yeah. Do you have that? Are you like the, I guess they call it an ambivert? Is that your type? Because we've met at conferences, and also shout out to Chad, who's also one of my favorite people to run into at conferences. And you guys are always like hanging out with everybody. It's so much fun. And then do you just get back to your hotel and crash?
Oh yeah, I do for sure. And the other thing about that is, like, if you want to get deep and philosophical, which I'm hoping we will,
I do.
I look at it as it's kind of like performing. Like it's almost like you're not a musician, but you're also performing your role or your place in the radio world, in the music world, and so forth. So in other words, like I'm pretty driven by being an amiable personality type. I really want to be liked and so forth. And I love all the people in our radio world, all the music promoters, all the other radio station personnel. But it's exhausting because at the same point, they only know a part of you, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I feel like at those I'm representing the brand of the radio station as much as, or even more than, my real self. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Like I feel like, yeah, and it's hard because I didn't even really have that. I don't think I really had that realization until a few years ago, or until I started to have a family and kids. Like I think I was more of what the job is or what the role is, and I think I've started to feel philosophically a little bit different or deeper in more recent years.
Well, I'm sure having kids will do that. I mean, I personally am not have no plans to have any. My partner and I are very happy with just the dogs, but I have a lot of respect for parents. My brother has 2 little kids, and I just imagine it's constant socialization at home. It's constant and aggressive socialization because you have to socialize with children and you have to interact with them and, just be people with them and teach them how to be people. So then, when you get into adult world, there's probably a part of you that's like, oh God, please nobody talk to me, which is what I liked about radio.
Yes.
Because I am also, I guess I'd call myself an ambivert as well. I always enjoy those conferences, but it's a little exhausting. You feel like, you have to present the best and most fun and friendly side of you. And, that can get tiring after a while. And I think I got good at pacing myself and knowing when it was time to take a walk around the block or just sit quietly in the corner and watch the band. But that was what I liked about radio. It was just the sitting by myself, talking about music to people who can't see me.
Yeah, what I've always loved about the medium of radio is that, comparatively to social media or all this online world, radio is still a shared experience in that the radio station is broadcasting one song or one message or one announcer at a time to many. So it's one source to many simultaneously, which you don't get, even looking on an Instagram or Facebook or anything on demand. It's kind of when you're ready for it, there it is, but you aren't sharing that experience at the same time with a whole mess of people, and and especially now when crowds, like when in-person crowds aren't permitted, then it almost makes the radio concept of a shared experience even more valuable.
Totally. Yeah, that's interesting because like
Yeah.
traditional television is kind of, I mean, I'm sure there are people who still have it and use it and enjoy it, but personally, I've switched over pretty much entirely to on-demand streaming. And yeah, so I
Yep.
really don't have that experience of like, oh, I'm going to watch the season finale of my show tonight and like watch it at the same time as everybody else and get everyone's real-time
Yep.
reactions. Instead, it's like you watch it when you watch it, you try to avoid spoilers until you've seen it, So
Yeah.
yeah, radio's kind
Yeah.
of one of the only things left like that.
Well, I think that's also why it's so fun to premiere a new song in real time, or why the bands get a kick out of it. Going back to that, when we get to do a premiere, we'll usually time it where if they've got a new single going up on the streaming platforms on like Friday, we'll premiere it on Thursday and make a big deal on the air. Like, this comes out tomorrow, but you're a Summit listener, so you get to hear it right now, making an event out of it. I think that those are really fun moments.
All right, buckle in. It's that time again. We are doing ad breaks here on MMPQB now, almost like we're a real podcast or something. This week, I want to tell you all about the Anchor in Kingston. If you live in Kingston, you already know about the Anchor. You'd be crazy not to. One of my very favorite restaurants and one of the true champions of restaurant lockdown. They have been adapting and overcoming since the very beginning of this thing. They started doing great pre-mixed cocktails right at the beginning of quarantine. They've been doing takeout and delivery, and they have weathered road construction right in front of their only entrance throughout almost all of this. It's just now starting to clear up a little bit over there, so it's easier to access them, but I can't imagine how hard it's been. But they have stayed open and stayed strong on the strength of their delicious ass food. Great burgers, great beer, great drinks, salads, everything you could want. Chili, comfort food, mac and cheese, just food to warm your soul. The Anchor in Kingston, right on Broadway. They are open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. for takeout and delivery. Brunch Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 3. And there's even a little picnic area on the side of the restaurant to enjoy your takeout. So you can go get takeout and sit outside and enjoy it safely and comfortably in the lovely little picnic area. So that's the Anchor, Broadway, Kingston. You know you want a burger.
May I ask, what are you doing now? I mean, I know you're doing the podcast and everything, and I saw the news come across on one of the websites when your position was furloughed or eliminated or whatever they had said it was, and that's a real shame. And you are a talent and an asset, and I just want to see you back in radio again sometime soon. But what are you doing to keep occupied and and keep things rolling right now?
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. But I'm just like living my best life, kind of. I mean, as much as I loved a lot of things about radio, I think, there was a part of me that was getting frustrated with aspects of the job and the particular company that I was working for. And I think I had kind of just fallen into this like complacent rut of like, okay, well, this is fine. Like, I'm just going to keep going to my job forever. And like, it was obviously, it was a shock to lose it. It was a bummer to lose it, but it wasn't necessarily the worst thing. So like, I am, I'm doing the podcast which sucks up a lot more time than you would think. I mean, initially I was like, work on it 1 or 2 days a week, but like there's stuff to do for it every day. And, I do want to grow it and make it better. So I'm spending a lot of time on that. I'm doing a lot of like projects around the house. I started a vegetable garden for the first time this year. I repainted some rooms. I recaulked the bathtub. I've been, hiking and running and getting out with the dogs and doing a lot of like swimming and sunbathing, because I have a lot of friends who are teachers and stuff like that who would have a lot of more free time in the summer. And when I was on the radio, I would be sitting there like looking at their Instagram stories of them like sunning themselves on rocks and just hating my life while I sat in the, the fluorescent studio.
Yeah.
And
Yep,
now,
yep.
yeah, I've been really enjoying my summer and getting a lot of outdoor time. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, and it's been wonderful. I'm studying Japanese again, and I'm practicing the violin, and someday I'm gonna go back to the real world and have to probably get some kind of job again. I don't know if it'll be radio or what,
Right.
whatever will have me. But for now, I just am riding this wave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember you did that trip a few years ago to Japan. Was your partner in a band? Is that right? Or
Yeah,
what
yeah.
was it that brought you over there?
So in non-COVID times, yeah, he plays bass in a metal band, and they had a couple of shows over
Sweet.
there. And I would not usually like tag along on a tour, but this time, they were going to Japan. I was like, I'm obviously coming, and
Yeah.
I like. And I said I would sell merch because I didn't want to just like tag along and just, hang off of his arm and like, take up space. I was like, oh, I'll sell merch. I'll help out. So then having put that out there, I was like, oh my God, I have to learn Japanese a little bit. Like, otherwise, how am I going to do this? So I busted my ass and I learned some Japanese, and we got there, and those places, the venues there are so well run and so professional and so courteous and kind. Like, we got there and they're like, no, we have people to sell merch. It's okay. You don't have to do anything. So
Oh, wow.
I had
Yeah.
this like basic command of like a little bit of Japanese, and it just it was so useful, because if you're a foreigner there and, people see you making any kind of effort to speak the native language and like not expect them to know English and cater to your needs, they're like, oh my God, you're great. Like, we love you. So we made so many friends just from me, like, piecing together Japanese sentences. And that was like 2 years ago now. And of course, I haven't kept up with it at all. But like, now that I have time again, I'm like, I'm going to go back and like try to brush up, because it's a cool language and I would really love to go back someday. So that's high on my bucket list,
Yeah.
just to see more of that country, because we only got to see a little bit.
Yep. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
What about you? Do you have any like bucket list travel plans for after we're allowed to travel again?
Yeah, I definitely have had that travel wanderlust, and I mean that's been the hardest thing for me in pandemic times, has been usually during the summer I basically go to 4 different conferences each year, which is kind of like radio camp.
Yeah.
Because there's one in Philadelphia in May, there's one in Louisville that I usually go to in June, then Boulder out in August, and then the Americana Fest in Nashville in September. And that's like, those are the events that I look forward to each year, because I love seeing seeing all of our friends and peers from the radio world. And of course, at all of these, there are bands playing, and none of it has happened this year. And it was kind of, I mean, logically, I understand why. But now, as we get to September here, I'm starting to feel so sad that none of these annual milestones have happened. Now, on the other hand, I love the break and just not, especially with young kids. My kids are 7 and 4, 2 boys, and, they've gotten really used, I mean, there were a lot of times where there were station events, or I was traveling, or, just there were a lot of times that I didn't get to spend as much time family wise, but it's all a balance. It's all a balance in life. And what's been so sad about this summer is I feel like since everything's on hold, it's been kind of a reflective time to understand the good and the bad, and to think a little more deeply. But anyway, yeah, to answer your original question, yeah, I really want to do a Europe trip. Like I've only been to the UK. I've never really explored Europe, and other places like that. And I've also always wanted to go to Australia. I'm just fascinated by, first off, the time zone difference and the seasonal difference being Southern Hemisphere hemisphere and everything. So one day, and especially as our kids get a little bit older and even more able to appreciate some of those different perspectives. Because I think you learn a lot. I learn a lot on any travel, almost anywhere. I just kind of take more life lessons out of it somehow, than just the normal routine. It's good to shake it up sometimes.
Absolutely. I wish it wasn't so cost prohibitive to leave the country, because I do think like if everybody could get out and see more of the world, like, America would be a much happier place if we all had a little more perspective. And Europe especially is a great example, because you go to Europe and you realize like, oh, our country is a baby. Like there's buildings here that, like in Europe, there's like 500, 600-year-old buildings, and America hasn't even existed that long.
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. Even in London, we saw that. We saw churches built in the 11th and 12th century, right in everyday, busy, bustling London, right next to a brand new office space, or some kind of a public transport platform or something. Like that really struck me as well. I think we would learn a lot as a people if Americans were a little more apt and a little more able to travel more freely and see other points of view. We get so stuck on our ways, and it has to be just the selfishness, just like even during the time of the stay-at-home orders and the arguments about wearing the masks or not wearing the masks. It just seems so selfish to me to try. Like, why can't we contribute to the better good, the larger good of everyone, and get through this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at like a lot of Asian countries where it's just normal to, if you're sick, if you just personally have a cold, you wear a medical mask so that you don't spread your germs around. And that's just like what people do. And therefore, like they've managed to, beat the pandemic pretty quickly and get their numbers back down, like without too much trouble, because it's just normal for people. Whereas here we have all of these people who are like, well, my freedoms, and it's like, but just do it. Like just do it, and then we can all go back to concerts, guys, if you just do it.
Well, right. And yeah, no, it's for sure. And like just thinking about those whose livelihoods depend on it, and there's just no end in sight as of right now, and not just the touring bands and the musicians themselves, but the venue workers and those who like book the tours and those who are like stagehands and like traveling with a different group. I always wanted to do that too. I always wanted to be like a tour manager, and like go on. I know a lot of people kind of look at me sideways about like, really? That's not a good job. But I've always thought that would be fun to like, to kind of navigate the way and to and from those places. And you're traveling, but it's also a work related thing. I don't know. I think it would be fun to try and navigate through like Europe or Canada or some foreign country with a band as a tour manager, because you kind of bonus get the trip out of it, even though you're really mostly just seeing the nightclubs and not really not really experiencing all the stuff that those cities have to offer. But I love the wanderlust,
I do too. And like that's my main issue with touring, is that like you don't really get to enjoy most of the places you go. So like you have to, if you can, obviously, if you have, if you're lucky enough to be able to, if you can build in a little bit of sightseeing, which is like what we did in Japan. We like tacked on a couple days at the beginning and end, and then instead of just going from show to show to show, we had like some time to like do some tourist stuff and explore the cities. And I didn't go on this one, but the same band also went to Russia a couple of years ago. And I don't.
Oh, cool.
I don't want to lie, but I think, because usually my boyfriend DJ usually tour manages. He's also the bassist, and he's, they're a small operation, so he's also usually the tour manager. And I'd be interested. One of these days, I'm going to drag him on the podcast, and that's a really interesting topic to bring up. Is like, what's it like to like tour manage your way through a country where you don't speak the language, have no idea where anything is, like can't even read the road signs. Yeah, that must have been, I've never really asked him about that aspect of it, but I'm sure that was wild. And I know that they also like tacked on a few days to just be in Moscow and just enjoy that.
Yeah. Yep.
How many times are you going to get to go to Moscow?
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I've always thought would be fun about about working with a band, and I would love to set up the radio visits. Like as
Hmm.
an even here in the U.S. I'd be like, guys, this is my world of expertise. Let me set up the morning show interview. We'll do that tomorrow. You know.
Yeah.
So. Um, that would be kind of fun, though, to see all the different radio stations and operations. It is a shame when you think about, like, right now, borders are closed. Most borders are closed to Americans. We'll
Yeah.
come through that eventually, but like right now, even if we had the time and the financial means, we can't really do that type of travel. If all you have is an American passport.
Isn't that a crazy feeling?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think about
yeah,
that. Like I mean, and obviously like nobody is, I mean, most people are not in a position to, pay for a trip right now anyway, but yeah, even if we could, we are not allowed to go anywhere.
yeah,
And I can't
yeah.
blame the rest of the
Like,
world. They're right. Like we're doing a bad job with this pandemic. You should absolutely close the borders to us.
yep, yep. It just gives you some perspective, to visualize the larger world, and like, and understand all of it that is around us. Like my trip to the UK, that was, gosh, it was before my oldest son David was born. So that was 9 years ago now. And I still think of it frequently, and like, took a ton of pictures. I was the crazy tourist that like would go into grocery stores and take a picture of the shelves because it was brands we didn't know in the US. And that was just
Oh,
fascinating to
aren't
me,
you glad you did though? Because like those are my favorite Japan pictures. They're just like the stupid things that I like looked and was like, oh, that's an interesting like food display, and like those are the things that I
Yeah.
look back on
Yep.
and I'm like, oh, that was an interesting food display.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing all of that type of thing again, and more touring and traveling, and just just making the best out of like understanding the world. I think that's part of like, maybe that's part of like what the trouble is we get so ingrained in the minutia of our lives, and like our jobs, and like what we're supposed to do with our time, that maybe we forget that there's more to the world around us than just that small part that we occupy every day. Like you were saying, like you of course loved working at the radio station, but now you have infinite possibilities
Yeah.
since you aren't committed to that all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's a very, very capitalist problem, and I think it's another of those things where like we're too close to see the forest for the trees. We're so entrenched in capitalism at this point that I think so many people in this country just think there's no other system that could possibly work, and that's just not true. Capitalism is an experiment. It again hasn't been around for all that long. There are other ways to run a country, there are other ways to run an economy, and under this current system we've got no time to enjoy our lives. There's so many people like I just struggling to just get by, and like these are not even like the people on the bottom of the economic ladder, but like just normal people with 9 to 5 jobs who just have no room for anything.
yep.
One your car breaks down, or somebody breaks their leg or whatever, and all of your savings is gone, and like that's not
Yep.
normal. That's not like okay. That's no way to be living, but we're all just like, well, yep, that's how it is.
Yeah, and we've just, so few have gotten to experience any other viewpoint or worldview, to see that there are other options. Like I have to admit, during the lockdown months and the stay-at-home orders, I kind of loved it. I
Yeah.
kind of loved the reflectiveness that it forced on people, and I think some people really hated it, and that's why there was such strong pushback. But it was really interesting to like to stop and reflect on what your daily existence is and why. And it made me realize that I am very fortunate compared to so many others, because we were able, I was able to maintain working and doing my radio show and going into the radio station, since it was, at that point, it was just three of us coming here and that was it. And our listeners at that point, although the listening patterns changed so dramatically, I feel like the people that were there were so in tune and so thankful for the sense of normalcy that we were kind of providing, or like just this sense of, of escape and musical enjoyment, that we really, meant more to them than ever before. And that made me feel really proud, because there's just, it's so easy to get caught in a loop, like you were saying, of what you have to do and what your role is. And I hope to keep learning and growing and exploring. I think these are the best things to instill in little people if you happen to be a parent.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you can find meaning in your work, and if your work makes you feel fulfilled and like you're providing something, and I had a sense of that too, in the early pandemic days when I was still going to the station, where I there had been days on the radio where I was kind of like, is anybody even listening to this? But like once that all started, I did have kind of a renewed sense of like, oh, I am providing a public service. Like I am, I'm keeping people updated on the latest news and the latest numbers and the latest public service announcements, as well as providing this like calming energy and playing, I was taking a lot of requests, and I was doing like a lot of like, send me your happy songs, just tell me what will make you happy and I'll play you, your happy music. And yeah, I really felt like I was providing some kind of service, and that did feel really good.
Yep.
But, our problem in America is that so often we're just working for the sake of working, and there's such strong backlash to not working and not working hard and not, like we really fetishize like working overtime and, just busting your ass, working 80 hours a week and never seeing your family. And it's like, why? What's the end goal? To amass money so that someday you can retire? Why not just work a little less now and enjoy your life as you go, while you're still young and you're still healthy?
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know. Do you think that these type of philosophies scare people? But I don't know exactly why. Maybe because it's so out of the norm of how we've been brought up and what we've learned.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the selfishness that you were talking about too, where there's so much resistance to the idea of like a social support network of any kind, because, oh, you can't just give free handouts. People have to work for stuff. Or, when there was all the discussion about canceling student debt, and so many people were coming out and being like, well, I paid my loans, so therefore it's not fair for other people to not have to. And Brad, I paid my student loans, and I would fucking love for student debt to be canceled for everybody else, because I'm not a monster, and I'm a member of the human race, and I want what's best for all of us, and I don't understand, and I know there's so many people who feel the way I do, but there were so many others who just thought that because they had to suffer, everybody else should also have to suffer. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
Is that how you want to live in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very, very valid point. There's also a karmic part to that too. Like, okay, so you paid off your loans and that was hard work, but that doesn't mean that everyone else should have to experience that same thing. Like, you will be rewarded in other ways down the road.
I'm rewarded by, I was lucky enough to be in a position. I didn't have very many loans, and I got a little lucky, and I was able to just knock it out quickly. And that was my luck. And it was nothing that it wasn't a virtue. It was just the circumstance I found myself in. So for me to then judge anybody else because they didn't have the exact same set of circumstances as I did would be ridiculous. And, I think people just don't see outside themselves sometimes. They just assume that their experience is universal to everybody. And I don't know why that's so hard for some people.
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that is really coming to the forefront and is uncomfortable for such a divided America right now too.
Yeah, how do you deal with that, like, as a parent? Like, how do you and Rachel, like, talk to your kids about this stuff? Like, do you talk to your kids about this stuff? Are they still too young?
Still young enough. Yeah, they're still young enough that, I mean, so David is 7 and he's kind of getting to, we just try and be, we try and be open-minded and explain things in such easy, common terms as possible with him, even things about like some parents having two mommies or two daddies or whatever, like we just kind of, we don't point, we just try and be open to different ideas than what our way is, and I think that, I don't know, like, I'm pretty proud because David's taken such a great interest in music and he's really keen on radio stuff. He was explaining the difference between AM and FM stations to me the other day.
Oh,
He
good
said
for
AM
him.
stations. Yeah, he said he's 7. He said AM stations are for talk and they are boring and he only likes the music stations.
That's succinct, David.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So yeah, I mean, we just try and present an open-minded atmosphere. And I don't know. I'm also so amiable that, like, if you want to talk social media for a minute, I've tried to, in the past, I've had a lot of people that are very diametrically opposed to my viewpoints, and I've tried to just kind of leave it alone. We're kind of coming to a point, I think, where it's hard to, there's so much divisiveness that it's hard to really let it go at some point now. Like, so in other words, I've let go of some friends that I've known for a while that just are so far off of my viewpoint that sometimes you just have to let go of some of those contacts. And it's terrible because I'm also a people pleaser and so amiable. And I try and understand other viewpoints and just let people believe in what they want. But, like with a lot of the social justice issues and the racism issues right now, I just don't see. There comes a point where you just have to cut it and let go and for your own sanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, and I've been doing the scroll of doom. I've been doing the scroll of doom so much. And it's, when the pandemic began, I was waking up at 2 a.m. and I would like scroll for a few hours and like not be able to get back to sleep and just have this overwhelming sense of dread. It's gotten a little better now, and I think summer has helped with that. But there's so much divisiveness that I don't know what the answer is there. Like, on one hand, people should be free to believe and understand what they want and everything, but on the other hand, how much is that holding us back? Overall?
And I mean, part of the problem is you have one side, which I guess I will rudely and bluntly say our side, which which does think that everybody has the right to believe what they want. But then you have the other side, which has slowly started to sneak into the territory of, actually, we don't think it's okay for you to think what you want. We're not going to live and let live. We are going to actually shoot you if you say what you believe, which we are now seeing literally happening. But I wanted to ask, as you're a public figure, you're on the radio, you're an afternoon drive host. Have you had any like listener issues, any listener negative interactions? I would occasionally get, because I also stopped kind of giving a fuck, like, as things got crazier and crazier. And, I initially tried to be very diplomatic and center. And then, as things got crazier, like, I was just like straight up telling people to vote for Bernie Sanders on the air. And like a couple of people didn't like that.
Man.
A couple of people
You're
didn't like
so
it.
cool. You are so cool.
I'm a goddamn commie.
this particular station is a little bit, we're a musical outpost and outlet, and we actually don't have like any news, and we don't carry NPR news or anything like that. So I think our view has been, we've tried to just cover music. And it's interesting because a lot of the songs we play and a lot of the artists we play have had some very pointed songs over the past few years.
Yeah.
I remember getting a few complaints when we started playing "This Land" by Gary Clark Jr.
Yep.
And he has that line about right in the middle of Trump country, But generally, our approach has been, we just don't go there as hosts, and sometimes the music does, and that's art and creative expression. But we just don't really cover that. We're a lot more matter of fact, and hopefully an escape and an entertainment outlet. There are certainly some people that can sense certain things, or like I've made under my breath comments and gotten a couple snippy emails, but I couldn't. I mean, I don't think I could get away with saying go vote for Bernie Sanders on how we do it. That's so cool that you did that.
Yeah, the music,
but
you're right, because the music has the message encoded in it most of the time, because, as AAA radio stations, like most of those independent artists are also, politically left-leaning and, have no obligation to not talk about it. And I remember getting a Facebook message when I played. Do you remember "Land of the Free" by the Killers that came out?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And we played that. Played that, Yep.
And I got a message when I was playing that one day that was like, "What a disgraceful song you're playing. God bless America." And I was like, all right, that's how you want to take it. But I don't think this song is anti-American. It's just sad.
Yeah. It must be hard to be, politically active as a conservative and as a Republican, because you run into those people every so often that are like, I love the music, even though I disagree with what the artist says, or like, imagine trying to be a Springsteen fan or a Jackson Brown fan, but being diametrically opposed to the artist's viewpoints, that must be tough.
I kind of can't imagine it, because I don't, I don't go listening to like Ted Nugent because I know he's going to piss me off.
Fair point.
But I believe that Ted Nugent has the right to write whatever shitty music he wants, and I don't have to listen to it. But like there are people on the other side who at this point are like, well, you shouldn't even be writing those songs. Like, well,
yeah, and it's not what America is founded on either. But I think I think it's all about tribes. It's all about sharing a viewpoint, and most likely those who like adult alternative music or adult rock or AAA format or whatever are going to tend to be a little more culturally and socially progressive, and that's kind of what the music stands for. There are exceptions, of course, but I think it's great that other things, that other genres can exist. I've been really fascinated lately by listening to music. This sounds crazy. Music of the 10s and 20s and the 1930s,
Really?
like going back to the popular songs of those eras. And I always had a kind of an interest, but I started buying these like compilations. There's like this small label called Archaeophone Records does the yearly series. So they have like the hit songs of like 1910 or 1911 or 1912. So I've been buying these collections of the popular songs from all of those eras. And first off, very many of those songs have very questionable language and like racist undertones and racist humor and things like that. Yeah. And that's just what the time was. And it's funny, my keen interest in this kind of became from learning about not the original, but the most recent pandemic of 1918. Mm-hmm. And I started to realize I started to think, what were people thinking? What was the mindset, 102 years ago when they were going through that pandemic? And then I realized, well, there are many recordings from that era. So that's kind of where some of those late nights when I couldn't sleep, and I was like, I'm going to read about this and I'm going to start listening to these songs. And that has really led to like a really renewed interest in like the pre-rock and roll era for me. But anyway, those songs are so fascinating. They're time capsules. And then in a way, that's what Gary Clark Jr. and the Killers will be in another 100 years for people looking forward, looking back at the 2020 pandemic, and the political culture of this time, or how we revere the 60s music at this time.
Yeah, totally. I'm super interested in, I'm going to have to go check some of that out for myself. Like, I've never even considered delving into music from the 1910s and 20s. I guess I know that there was some flapper type music, right? Like Noel Coward, vaudeville a little bit, maybe still.
Yep.
Is that all pretty accurate?
It's fascinating. So we started up a show on the radio station here, where this is the strangest thing, but like, this is why I love public radio too, is because we just started this crazy concept. Fridays at 5, we started this show called Cruisin' the Decades. And the concept is, any single song, we play one song from the 1910s and then the 20s and then the 30s and then the 40s. So we bounce through decades and styles, just one song per week. So it hopefully doesn't irritate anybody that hates it. And so after 12 songs, we've covered 100 years of music history. Huh. And it's just a concept that I came up with. We have the freedom, and God bless my general manager, who just was like, great, try it, see what people think. And so it's kind of forcing me to dig deep every week into like all this early, the pre-rock and roll era, and find interesting songs. I'm kind of looking at it as like one of my best and favorite creative outlets. So we do that each Friday at 5. But I've learned a lot about, early pop artists like Sophie Tucker, or like Henry Burr is another one that was a real chart topper in the teens. I think one of his nicknames is the original king of pop. But like, this is a man who was like, singing popular songs in like the wax cylinder era in the teens and 20s. And the music's fascinating. Henry Burr did a version of Are You Lonesome Tonight? We always think of that as an Elvis Presley song, but that song goes back 100 years,
even earlier than that.
Yeah. So I don't know, that's almost been a weird way of coping for me during this pandemic, is to like take up a keen interest in all of this music. And we just can't tell my wife that I've been ordering all these collections and rare recordings. Like, I was so glad that I'm going to admit this on your podcast. This will be funny. I was so glad that we got that stimulus check, and that basically all went to record collecting for me.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad that in the last 5 minutes we have touched on record collecting.
Yeah, because that was one of our main topics.
I know. Well, I was really enjoying where the conversation was going. I figured if it came around, it came around, and if not, we'll get it next time. But I do want to briefly talk about it a little bit, because I am not really capable of collecting things. I am such an anti-clutter person right now. Like, my house is small is part of it. There's just not a lot of room to collect things. And my partner is a little bit of a collector. He's got basses and guitars around. He's got pedals. He's got Magic the Gathering cards. So he's kind of like, there is a collection around the house and none of it is mine. So, how do you and Rachel balance that? Like, do you have like a vast record collection?
Oh yeah, I mean, and here's another funny thing for me. I came of age during the CD era, so I do collect vinyl and have quite a collection of vinyl and 45s. But I actually love CDs even more. Like, it's just my youth, like coming from that, and like, I use all the online platforms, and it's great because it's so organized, but I want a hard copy of everything. And it's actually easier to play on the radio. Like most of the, teens and 20s and 30s music that I'm playing are from CD compilations from that era, because usually the recordings are better and it's easier to get on the air and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like our basement is out of control. Like it is out of control. The kids don't understand it either, because to them, they can find anything they want on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. So, they think it's kind of interesting that daddy's always getting music in the mail, like basically every day. But like I'm obsessive, and I have been for 30 years now. I mean, I've just always been a collector, like to the point where at some point I have to start organizing and letting go of some of it.
Can you store some at the radio station? Is there room for that to be like, we're gonna just put a shelf here?
A little bit, but not yeah, I mean, I have a fair amount at the radio station, but not nearly as much as I should. Most of it's in my basement / the music room, which is the whole basement. But I'm also not very organized or alphabetized with it. So I'm a creative type. So I'm like, I know where that Perry Como box set is. It's in the third box down on that stack over there. It's collectors are strange people. It's and I'm saying that about myself for sure. So, but I love like the record stores or like record conventions and things like that. That's another thing I miss. Are just they actually across the you probably have them in your area too. Like they would do every few months. Different cities would have like a record, a hotel ballroom record convention, and a lot of times they're selling rare vinyl or bootleg CDs or whatever, and it's 40 or 50 dealers who work on that stuff. I could be a dealer at this point. I just never want to let go of any of it. Like I get too nervous to actually give, like it's too, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I'm talking about. I'm admitting some truths here. Like we'll get promo copies of something that I love. Say the Killers album or something, and I'll take like 3 copies home, because I'll be like, this way I can scatter them about and it'll be easier to find it again when I need it.
Oh my God, you really squirrel them away.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally do.
A little, when there's something I really loved, I would get excited and I would maybe hang on to one of my favorite bands is of Montreal, and they're not super radio friendly, but sometimes they would put out a single or a new album, and I would I'm just gonna take this one for the personal collection, because I know nobody at the station's ever gonna play it. And I was sent some wonderful vinyl and some signed vinyl from various artists that I really enjoyed over the years, and that was a cool thing about the station. I do have a few records that I really love that I'm happy that I have, but yeah, I just don't have the squirrel brain. I don't have it. And part of me thinks it would be fun, but I just prefer just having more space, I guess.
Well, you're probably better off, because it can be stressful to have an unmanageable collection of anything. And just the clutter, we're definitely cluttered, and Rachel was just after me because we turned our spare bedroom into the education room, right? And that's where the kids go to when David does his virtual school, his distance school, we were doing classes in there. And the idea is it's supposed to be for the kids to do activities and be educational. Well, I brought in, a couple boxes of CDs that I was sorting through, and they were on the floor in the middle of the education room. And that did not go over well. And Rachel said, "You get that shit out of here right now, because we have to have at least one room that the kids can do their, do school in and have as their own space."
Yeah.
So, yes.
I guess just a couple boxes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not Hoarders level. I mean, I watched that show and I think I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't get to this point. That's like a real disorder, and those people seek help. I just hope I don't get to that point, but I just collect and stash and store this stuff, and I have for years. I mean, I don't know why. I like to. I guess growing up, my dad had a lot of records, and I just thought it was the coolest thing, and he still does, you know. And I've just followed in those footsteps, and I've always wanted to keep hard copies, like a librarian of some sort.
Well, if it sparks joy, which reminds me, the one thing that I have kind of held on to is my conference badges. I think I have all of my conference badges still.
Yep.
Those I hang on to because they spark joy. There's something about them that, like, I like looking at them and being like, oh yeah, like that year, and like that's the year they finally put MK on my badge instead of Mary Kate. Like,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
just good memories.
No, those can be good. Those can be good moments and memorable. Yeah, because I also collect a lot of that, you know, memorabilia. You know, conference badges and any pins or buttons or backstage passes. I always try and save like in the CD, like on the back of the CD or something.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like I'm pretty lucky in that I got to make a career out of doing this music stuff because it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do or been qualified to do. You know?
Yeah.
So,
I feel ya.
Yep.
Oh man, well we're over an hour and I should wrap it up, but I wanted to give you a chance to plug whatever you got to plug. Is there anything going on at the summit that we should know about, or anywhere that we can donate?
Well,
or
yeah, you know, you can just find out what we're up to on thesummit.fm. And so that's the site, is .fm, like FM radio. It's actually a .fm is the Federation of Micronesia. So it's like a small country.
Is it really?
But yeah, and they before I ever got here, they figured out how to get that to be the radio station website instead of a .org or a .com. So we're thesummit.fm, and I do the afternoon show, and it's just a passion. It's a labor of love. I feel like I'm in the right place, and philosophically that's a good feeling to have, and I don't take for granted that many people don't get to feel that way. So anyway, yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and hope that some of your listeners will take a look at what we're up to here.
Yeah, can they listen online at the website? Do you have streaming?
Oh yeah. Yep,
Fabulous.
We have streaming through the website. We have an app. You just search The Summit Radio, and we're on Alexa. You can just say Alexa, play The Summit Radio, and it'll come on. And I think it's going to come on in my office here. Oh, good, she didn't hear me this time. I have one of those in the office, so they can monitor my every thought.
Oh, good, just what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Brad, this was a blast. This hour flew by. Thank you so much for talking to me. Thanks for listening to More Music Please Quarantine Beat. Follow the show on Instagram at moremusic.podcast and check out the website moremusicpodcast.com for new episodes. Questions or comments, email moremusic.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks to DJ Scully, Michael Cadnar, and James Stewart for the catchy theme song you're hearing now. I'm MK Burnell. Talk to you next time. And once again, thanks to Unleashed Music for their support for the show this week, unleashedmusic.com.